So you were just voting?
I did, yeah, or I was, rather. Yeah.
So I want to ask you, vote for him. How would you describe your political views? Like, what's important to you?
What's important to me is inclusion and having a city that is, not just for a certain socioeconomic class of people. Yeah, absolutely. I've moved further toward the center in recent years as I've entered my 30s. I have found myself getting a little more politically moderate, but definitely, I do want a city where there's room for representation for marginalized and low-income people in the downtown east side, indigenous people, and groups outside of those that tend to hold power traditionally.
I can ask, what do you do for work?
I actually have the pleasure of working for SFU's business school for a wonderful organization called Radius. We run a social innovation lab and venture incubator inside the BD School of Business. So basically we work supporting leaders and ventures that are working towards a more just, sustainable, resilient, and inclusive economy. So it's basically venturing in service of systems change and a reformed economy.
Very interesting.
Yeah, man.
Why is that something that's important to you?
I think we live in systems that are highly influenced by traditional structures of power and concentrations of power. And I think if we want to live in a society that really makes room for everyone and where everyone is allowed to flourish and fully participate to the full extent to their full potential, we need to be pushing on our kind of current system on policy levels, on market levels, on governmental levels, and also on cultural levels. So that's important to me because I see that particular strategy for pushing for those changes as being one that has a lot of potential and a lot of capacity for success. So, yeah.
Do you see change happening?
All the time, absolutely. Both in my work and beyond, like I see the sort of consciousness around some of the causes of people being marginalized in the downtown east side on just a population level and a popular level, absolutely shifting towards people really seeing things like mental illness and addiction as circumstances that are very much outside of people's control. Whereas when I was growing up, say 10 years ago, the attitude was much more entrenched in this idea of like, why don't these people get jobs? Why are these people lazy? It was very much just looking at the surface appearance of everything and less looking at causes, looking at historical marginalization, looking at the residential school system, looking at these more sort of historical roots for the situation as it appears on the surface. And I'm feeling like the popular awareness of some of the more historical and systemic causes for why certain people are marginalized is definitely on the up and up. And when that awareness starts to change, that's when people's actions start to change. That's when the way we structure our society and our policies start to change. But it has to start with popular awareness, with people actually experiencing shifts in their thinkings and their thinking and their dominant paradigms. So yeah, no, I'm an ex-pessimist, but I feel good about a feminist ex-pessimist, rap star expressionist, and I feel good about it, man. I feel like we got a long way to go, but I definitely see a lot of positive momentum. Yeah.
Did you say you're a rap star?
All day, baby. All day. Yeah. I'm an MC, Young Nige, friends with the help. What up? That's my collective, a little trio with Van City's finest DJ/producer K-Rec and my boy Low Lux. We do our thing, man. We just try to represent ourselves, our own experience, our own lives. We're not really trying to make it sound just like all the other rap you hear. We just want to represent what it's like to be us and what we see going on around us, and just maintain humility and try to keep it real, positive when applicable, and not when not. So yeah, that's what's up.
What do you love about making music?
Oh man, I had low self-esteem growing up. Like I didn't like myself very much, and music was the first time, making rap music specifically was like one of the first times I felt like I had something valuable and interesting to say and a fun, creative way to say it. So it really was an empowering experience for me, and I try to pass that on. I try to run workshops with, youth who are marginalized or refugees or are dealing with obstacles or at risk in some way, to just try to create space for other people to experience that. But I mean, rap is like one of the few times when you can say, I'm awesome. I'm the ish, you know, like it's one of the few times in your life, one of the few contexts where that's totally acceptable, and a lot of people, more people than I think is commonly realized, need that opportunity to feel like they are truly awesome. So that was a big transition for me, for sure.
Really well said, man.
Thank you, man. Thank you for doing what you're doing. I don't even know what you're doing, but thank you for. I'll ask you after the interview.
Do you have anything else to say, or maybe a story to tell us?
A story to tell or an opinion? Oh my gosh, that's a tough one. I used to work for an organization called PHS Community Services Society, or commonly referred to as the Portland Hotel Society, and I worked for them for many years. And they've been through their share of, tumultuous happenings over the last decade. You might have heard about them. I won't get into that, but I will say that a part of the mandate there, and I don't work with them anymore, but I really hold their work close to my heart. Part of their mandate is meeting people where they are, and realizing that people are the way they are for a reason. No one is in the position they're in for no reason, and no one comes to where they're at without a story. And the story I'll tell is of this guy who was constantly, this wasn't even at PHS, this was a different housing society that I worked for, but there was this guy who was constantly getting in trouble because he was experiencing conflict with other people in the shared computer room. And he was just always kind of antagonizing people in there, and he was really worried that this was going to lead to eviction somehow. So I was like, well, if you don't want to, be in trouble all the time, why don't you just stop, for lack of a better word, being such a dick to the other people in the computer room? And he looked at me, he took a pause, and he said, and I'll never forget this, he said, "Don't you think if I could be any nicer, I would?" And that has always stuck with me. And it's not to say that that's licensed to go and be a jerk, but what it means is people have stories they bring with them. People are coming from somewhere. They are not their ostensible surface appearance. We're contextual people. And before you decide to make a judgment about somebody or assume you know what someone else's life was like or why someone is the way they are, I think it's important we see each other with humility and just understand that there's probably a lot more to the story than we can see, like now in the present moment. Yeah, man. Yeah, what are you guys doing? Thanks, guys. Yeah, appreciate it. I never wear a hat. I'm like mad self-conscious about this hat. I'm like, oh, it's raining, but.
It's like an indie project that we've been doing for a year today, actually.
Oh, wow, congratulations.
We've been filming with strangers. Yeah. It'll be like a feature-length film / YouTube series, maybe. We're on Instagram and stuff like that.
Nice. What's it called?
It's called Keep It in the Streets.
Keep It in the Streets. And so what's the rest of it?
So it's all based around kind of like street photography, but more of the idea of street photography, which is basically like getting out, interacting with people, meeting strangers, seeing the world anew is kind of like the main themes, I guess.
Nice. Yeah. That's awesome, man. I'm a big believer in that, and actually like getting out and talking to people instead of just like subject matter experts.